Expo Vista TV has participated to several trade shows about urban development, mobility, multimediality and infrastructures. In almost all of these events, both private and public companies introduce new products, new technologies and new visions. But in reality, the situation is just like Musk summarized it in a recent call with financial analysts.
I think it's high time we invested in infrastructure in this country. We have a lot of crumbling highways and bridges, and frankly, when I visit China, I see their infrastructure as being much better than ours. It's great. Europe has better infrastructure. It's really quite sad. The U.S. infrastructure, especially sort of roads and highways, is where it is today, and our airports, in a lot of cases, are an embarrassment. And it's not just a question of money; it's a question of will. Sometimes we spend a lot of money on these things, but what are we getting for it? We really need to be thinking about what is the transportation of the future, not the transportation of the past. If this was 1920, do you want to be investing in steam engines or internal combustion engines? Obviously, not steam engines. So, this is a time to think about the future.
Though the evidence suggests that Elon Musk is right, it is also true that the current state of the infrastructures in the US is also what creates the opportunities for most of Musk's companies. From energy to aviation, from roads to transit, and even ports and wastewater.
The American Society of Civil Engineers takes a snapshot of the American infrastructure every 4 years and presents it in the form of a school report card. Every sector is assigned a grade based on the physical condition and the investment needed for improvement. Here are the details from the last edition of the Infrastructure Report Card, dated 2017. Energy. Most electric transmission and distribution lines were constructed in the 1950s and 60s, with a 50-year life expectancy. Today, more than 640,000 miles of high-voltage transmission lines in the lower 48 states' power grids are at full capacity.
The California wildfires and the power outages back in 2019 revealed the vulnerability of the grid. As a result, Tesla, according to financial reports, experienced some growth in the demand for solar panels and batteries. And the company remains optimistic for the future.
And internally, we want to have at least 1,000 solar roof install teams and taking a week or perhaps a little less than a week to do an install, which gets you 1,000 a week roof installations. We see demand is good, production is good, so it's really all about the install. And then, like I said, also building up the training the very a diverse group of companies in the roofing industry to also install solar roof. That I think will allow us to scale, far beyond 1,000 a week. We're also seeing a lot of interest outside of North America, so we do expect this to be a product that is international, and actually seeing a tremendous amount of interest from China on the solar roof. So. We're confident this will be a very significant product for the company over time.
Aviation. Before the pandemic, the US airports were serving 2 million passengers daily, but they struggled to keep up with investment needs to meet current and future traffic.
At the time, the report predicted that normal conditions 24 of the top 30 in the US major airports may soon experience Thanksgiving peak traffic volume, at least one day every week. Delta CEO Ed Bastian gave a more optimistic scenario during his keynote speech at CES 2020, but this was before the airline industry felt the blow of the coronavirus. In the long term, Musk's visions of traveling anywhere in the world in less than 1 hour will become a welcome option, though most likely for business travelers and the ultra-rich.
Roads. In 2014, Americans spent 6.9 billion hours delayed in traffic, 42 hours per driver. All of that sitting in traffic wasted 3.1 billion gallons of fuel. The cost of lost time and wasted fuel combined is estimated to add up to $160 billion.
Traffic is a challenge that Elon Musk has tackled with the idea of moving passengers to underground tunnels excavated by the Boring Company. The idea was labeled as a hobby and as a personal solution to skip traffic in his commute to SpaceX office in LA. But if a technology can dig a tunnel 10 times faster and at a much lower cost than traditional boring equipment, then it is no surprise if the venture becomes more than a hobby. The first system, though a smaller and more basic version compared to the original vision, will open in Las Vegas in January 2021, in time for CES, and will connect two halls of the Las Vegas Convention Center. And even this year, in spite of the pandemic, the Boring Company has received interest from countries like Israel, Australia and Switzerland. Back to CES, a few years ago we got very close to the capsule of the Hyperloop, the futuristic transportation system conceptualized by Musk but given to others as an open source to develop. There are now feasibility studies all over the world about the development of the Hyperloop as a solution to problems affecting other infrastructures, including in the report card, in particular rail, transit and bridges.
Rail is the only infrastructure that scores a B, but the focus is on the commercial railway network. This is a system that carries approximately 1/3 of US exports, delivers about 5 million tons of freight, and puts the US among the top 5 or 6 countries in the world. This network, however, is mostly private, and that's why capital investment is significant.
If we compare the railway systems for passengers transportation with the ones in Asia or Europe, the US rail too will score an unquestionable F.
Transit. Despite increasing demand, the nation's transit systems have been chronically underfunded, resulting in aging infrastructure and a $90 billion rehabilitation backlog. Bridges. The US has 614,387 bridges, almost 4 in 10 of which are 50 years or older. About 9% of the nation's bridges were considered structurally deficient in 2016.
Tesla does not have a specific port-related venture, but recent news reveal how important ports and waterways are. But let's see the current situation first.
Waterways. The water highway system is composed by 25,000 miles of inland waterways and 239 locks, and it is operated and maintained by the US Army Corps of Engineers. The system transports more than 600 million tons of cargo each year, about 14% of all domestic freight. Most locks and dams on the system are well beyond their 50-year design life, and vessels frequently experience delays. Investment has increased in recent years, but upgrades on the system still take decades to complete. Ports. The United States has 926 ports and represent roughly 26% of the US economy. Ports need to invest in expansion, modernization and repair to compete globally. Ships, in fact, are getting bigger, require modern and faster logistic on land and deeper navigation channels, which only a few US ports currently have.
It is well documented that Elon Musk has a very low tolerance for delays and inefficiencies, so we will not be surprised if Tesla, SpaceX or Musk himself will come up with solutions to make even ports more efficient. Already, to reduce time in dealing with the amount of paperwork that goes with loading and unloading parts at Shanghai's port in China, Tesla is experimenting the transition to a blockchain system together with Costco, the largest shipping company in the world, not to be confused with Costco, the wholesale distributor. On this channel you will find several videos on logistics from events we attended in the past. We know of other companies that recently have come up with ideas to improve the movement of goods at ports too. So we know it is just a matter of time before we will see innovations in this field from Tesla or others. We will also have video about this, so you may want to take this opportunity to subscribe to this channel. The port of Philadelphia is also becoming relevant to Tesla as the company realized that it can save time by shipping Model 3 to Europe from there, even including the time that it takes to ship the cars on trains across the country. And finally, just recently, SpaceX leased some land at the port of Los Angeles to establish a facility for research, design and fabrication of aerospace components and space vehicles, in particular the Starship. Components fabricated at this location will then be transported by sea to the spaceport in Texas. And speaking about water, wastewater treatment is also an important infrastructure that needs to be addressed. As mentioned, if there are inefficiencies, Tesla normally is quick to find a solution. In fact, recognizing its role responsibility in this area, Tesla has come up with a new filtering system that reduces waste, and it now has a patent for it. There are other infrastructures that need funding, like schools, parks, levees, and drinking water.
In the end, the American Society of Civil Engineers forecast that it would cost about $4.590 trillion over the next decade to bring the country's airports, roads, bridges, public schools and ports up to a functioning level, about $2.064 trillion more than what governments and the private sector were ready to spend. And this when the economy was at its best.